Welcome to Nothing But Nets. It is good to be back. It is really, really good to be back. We're going to get into why the Brooklyn Nets might not be so bad this year. And when I say not so bad, the over-under on the Nets was 19 and a half wins. And look, that's not an outrageous number to predict. The Nets on paper have a very bad roster. They're very young. We talked about the fake ID club. Everyone starting on the team at 25 and younger. Teams don't typically win that way. These aren't even high draft picks. This is not like the baby Bulls. These are guys that were late first rounder. Some of them were high picks and stuff, but Cam Thomas, Nick Claxton, Jalen Wilson, second round pick, Nick Claxton, second round pick, Cam Thomas. So these aren't guys who are expected to excel, and these are the guys that you're starting. So it makes, and the Nets won 32 games last year, was 11th seed in the East, and missed the play-in, and there were only 11 teams trying to make the play-in. And I think that's the key part here. How many teams are going to be competing to get in? So when you put the number at 19, you look at the roster and say, yeah, I can see that team winning 19 or 16 or less. But it's really not that simple. The only team that has won less than 20 games the last 3 years is the Pistons. They've done it twice. The Pistons play in the and Washington. Washington did it last year. They won 14 and 15 games. And Detroit lost, a million games in a row to start the season. Worst start in the history of basketball. It was really, really bad for the Pistons. Washington didn't try. They were horrible. They won 15 games. So you're at the point where you're going to say the Nets are going to have an epically bad season. Epically bad. Horrendous. This is the lowest projected win total in like 30 years or something crazy like that. So what they're projecting from the Nets is all-time bad. And look, there's certainly a possibility that it could go that route. It's also certainly possible that it's not going to go that route. And I just want to show you the standings from last year and why the Nets have an outside shot. And this is not a great shot, but they have an outside shot of, I think, making a play-in. I would bet against it. I wouldn't bet on it, but I would definitely take the over on 19 wins. I'm going to explain to you why that's a good thing and why if they win 19 games, that's also a good thing. So here are the standings from last year. We can kind of look at this and say, okay, the Celtics are obviously going to be better than the Nets. The Knicks obviously going to be better. The Bucks obviously going to. We can go down. What I would say is the top 8, and I don't think this is going to change much. I mean, the order is going to change, but I don't think the 8 teams are going to change. The Celtics, the Knicks, the Bucks, the Cavs, the Magic, the Pacers, the 76ers, and the Heat are all obviously far better than the Nets. It's not close. It's not worth debating. Number 9, the Bulls, 39 and 43. They're going to drop off. The Bulls are tanking. The Hawks. Well, I think the Hawks are going to get worse too. And if the Hawks trade Ice Trae, if they trade Trae Young, this is going to drop off precipitously. So you got 2 teams that finished ahead of the Nets in the play-in spots who are going to tank. And then below that, we have 12, 13, 14, and 15. The Raptors, I don't think they're going to get any better. You could argue they're going to get worse, but I see them staying about the same. So that's 25 wins. It's a horrible, miserable season. Hornets, I think, are going to get better. Let's put the Hornets in the 9th spot. Let's assume Ball is healthy. They got a decent young roster of players. I think they get into the play-in this year. That's 9. Then you have the Wizards and the Pistons. So here's what we have. 2 teams that are awful. 14 and 15 wins. Do you think that they can double their win total? Double their win total from a year ago. That would be impressive. I can't see it happening. So someone's got to win these games. If we put the Hornets at, 34, 35 wins, we put them at the 9th seed. That means the Hawks would be the only other team not tanking. So what you would have in the East is 10 teams not tanking, 10 teams in. But what if the Hawks decide to tank? that would put them out. It's not unreasonable to suggest that they're going to tank. They're a terrible team. They're not good. They're a horrible defensive team. Trae Young is not the guy that's going to take you to the next level. He can't even get you into the playoffs. He can't get you beyond the play. And the only reason they made the play was because the Nets were absolutely horrible. So the Nets were 32-50. If they win roughly that amount of games, which I think they can, look, the only thing they lost is Mikal Bridges. Now you're going to say Mikal Bridges is their best player. Sure, fine. But if the Hawks, who finished ahead of the Nets, trade Ice Trae, they lost Ice Trae and DeJounte Murray. That they've lost their two best players, if that was the case. They've already lost one of their top two players, and I would argue DeJounte Murray is a better player, or at least as good as Mikal Bridges. So there's going to be drop-off in Atlanta as well. What I'm saying is this last spot is up for grabs. Now, if the Nets get this spot, which I don't think it's – because I think you're going to have those top 8 teams that we mentioned. At number 9, you're going to have Charlotte. And at number 10, you have 6 teams kind of trying to – not get that play in. One of them's going to have to make it. The Raptors signing Emmanuel Quickley doesn't make him any better. I don't think Quickley is any better than Cam Thomas. As a matter of fact, I would take Cam Thomas over him. And perhaps I'm biased. And Quickley is a good player. He's a bucket. But I think Cam Thomas is a better scorer. Now, you can argue that Quickley is a better ball handler and a better distributor. I probably wouldn't argue with you. But the Nets are there with the Raptors. They're there, and I would still say yes. The Pistons got Tobias Harris. How many wins does Tobias Harris get you? Less than 5. So I don't understand unless you think their guys can take a massive step up, but ours can't. The only thing we're missing is Bridges. So you have Cam Thomas, Claxton, you have all these guys developing. If these guys develop like you think they will, Jalen Wilson, Noah Clowney, Keon Johnson. There's players here. There's talent here. Then you have Bogdanovic. Bogdanovic is at least as good an offensive player as Bridges. Now, he can't do the other things that Bridges does, but as far as scoring the ball, Bogdanovic is an efficient scorer. He can make up points if you want him to. We're not going to get into Ben Simmons because I feel like it's a ridiculous topic. But if we go with a starting lineup of Schroeder, Cam Thomas, Jalen Wilson, or Cam Johnson, right? Again, Cam Johnson is currently on this team. Dorian Finney-Smith is currently on this team. We're getting to the point where if we don't trade him, they're going to at least start the season on this team. And if they start off okay, do the Nets go for the play-in? They can get it if they try for it. If they play their guys and they go for it, they can make it. Because like I said, Atlanta's dropping off and the other teams aren't any good. And the other teams are all tanking. If the Nets want to make the play-in, they can make it. They couldn't do it last year because of the Hawks. The Hawks are not as good. The Bulls are not as good. Both those teams are taking a massive step back and looking to tank. I'm not saying the play-in is a win, but if the Nets get to the play-in, what does that mean? It means they perform at about the same level, if not better than they did last year. In order for them to do that, Cam Thomas will have to take a step up. Noah Clowney would have to have made that step up. Jalen Wilson would have to have made that step up. Keon Johnson, Zaire Williams would have to have contributed in the rotation. All these guys would have had to work out. So what does that mean? It means you're a lot closer than you think. Now, the next year, Ben Simmons comes off the books. You have $50 million. You have $40 million coming off the book. You take a look at the 2025 free agency class, and you really start to say, hey, look, we're not as far off as we thought we were. We won 30 games with this team, a team that's rapidly improving. I go in, I have 4 first-round draft picks. Now, look, if I'm the 10 seed, I'm still not going to make the playoffs because I'm not better than any of the 8 teams. And if I'm the 10 seed, I got to win 2 games on the road, and that's not going to happen. So they're not making the playoffs. They can make the play-in. If you guys think that's a win, or it doesn't matter if that's a win or a loss in your book. So you look at the 2025 draft, not the draft class, but the free agency class, and there are some names that you can get. Brandon Ingram, I think, would be a great fit for the Nets, a fantastic fit for the Nets. Aaron Gordon, I think, would be a fantastic fit for the Nets. So you could have a 30 to 32 win team with 4 first-round draft picks and the cap space to sign those 2 guys that I just named in Ingram and Gordon. So you add Ingram and Gordon, 4 first-round draft picks to a team that won 30 to 32 games. Now you're a playoff team. Now you've taken that step up. Because those guys that we talked about, Cam Thomas, Jalen Wilson, etc., Noah Clowney, Nick Claxton, they all took a step up, and they all did what you wanted them to do. So if this team makes a play, it's a good thing because all the guys that you wanted to take a step up, all the guys that you said, hey, I think these guys might be able to play, showed you that they could play, and that's how the Nets got into the play-in. If they don't, if no one really takes a step up, and the Nets struggle, and the Nets win 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 games, and they're terrible, and they lose 60-plus games, and they're absolutely horrible, which is also a possibility. It's very possible that the Nets are horrendous next year. That is what Vegas is betting, is what everyone seems to think, and it's not ridiculous. Like, it definitely could happen. They could be a 15, 16-win team next year. They could be the worst team in the NBA. They could. But what that tells me is, unfortunately, these guys didn't work out. These guys didn't take a step forward. It didn't work out. The lineup of Clowney, Bogey, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam, and Schroeder didn't work out. Jalen Wilson didn't work out. Clowney didn't work out. These guys didn't take that step up. If that's the case, okay. Now I have a top pick in the draft, and I get Cooper Flagg, I get Ace Bailey, or Dylan Harper, or whoever it is that you think is that dude, right? Let's say it's Cooper Flagg. Let's use I think Ace Bailey is the best case scenario, but let's say it's Cooper Flagg. You guys really like Cooper Flagg. Okay, let's say we get Cooper Flagg. That's a win. So whether or not the Nets are the worst team, second worst, or third worst, or they're a play-in team, either way, that's a win for the Nets. Either these guys take a step up and they develop into the talent that we think they can be in Cam Thomas and Jalen Wilson. And those guys, Noah Clowney, those guys play at a much higher level. And we take a step up, and with the veterans that we have, Doe and Bogdanovich and Claxton and whatever, Schroeder, we learn to win. And we learn to win enough games where we turn out to have about the same record. And losing Bridges didn't lose us any wins because the other guys filled the gap there. And we get 32 wins. And we get to the play, and we get smacked in the play-in, and then we're still drafting in the lottery. It's not a loss, it's a win because all those guys stepped up and all those guys developed. Or they don't. They play at the level that Vegas and the bookmakers are expecting us to be at, and then that suck and they get a top 3 pick. And that's great because we get Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey. So there's not really any downside here. There's no downside really for us sucking and being as bad as advertised, or there's really no downside in us underachieving. I mean, and us overachieving and us becoming a play-in. And it's not impossible to suggest that we're a playing team. You've got all these teams that are going to tank. I really believe you got 6 teams that are tanking. One of those tanking teams mathematically has to make it. You have to have 10 playing teams from the East, right? You can't have 9. You have to have 10. So which team is going to surprise you in that tank and then say, hey, let's go for it. And you go for it and you play Charlotte, and maybe you beat Charlotte, you get another game, and then you lose to Miami or whatever. Right? I can't see them getting into the playoffs because they got to win 2 road games if they're the 10 seed, 2 road games against teams that are better than them. That's highly unlikely. Elimination games, the season on the line, you got to win 2 games against teams that are better than you. It's probably not going to happen. But getting to the play-in would be a successful season from a wins and loss standpoint for the Nets. Now, like I said, there's a reason not to hate that. It's because that means your guys developed and they played well. So the Nets may not be as bad as you think. And if you're rooting for a tank, I understand that. And if you're rooting for these guys to develop and turn out to be what we're hoping they are in Wilson, Thomas, and Clowney, and Zaire Williams, like if these guys work out and they are good players, which they could be, then they can make the play-in. If these guys pan out, like they're going to win games. They're going to win games because there are 5 other teams tanking in the Eastern Conference. Let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts, comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Nothing But Nets is a daily Nets podcast. Going to bring you content every day. We're going to take a look. Nate will join me later in this week, and we will take a look at Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, Cooper Flagg, and what other prospects the Nets may entertain if they should draft in the top 3, which they're expected to do. It is July 28th, 2024, from Texas to the world. Thank you, and God bless.